welcome back to another episode of Pulling Threads. Today we have a very special guest, Kayla Licari. And Kayla helps high achieving wives and moms and their husbands stay deeply connected through nervous system awareness, subconscious reprogramming, and holistic health. But as we will get into, Kayla left a career, and we're going to talk about all of that, the career she had, the career she's left, the why. And I think there are some rare components to her why that I want to really let her talk about. I think that most people use these kind of seasons of life to let their marriage or their relationships drift apart, and you seem to have done the opposite, which I love. And you've used it to kind of build something together. So, we're going to jump right in with you, Kayla. First of all, welcome.
Thank you so much.
You left and took a leap from this 15-year PA career, physician assistant, and six-figure pay and identity. As we were just kind of talking before we jumped on here, I can relate to that, your identity really being tied up in what you do. I had the same situation, but you walked away from it, and I want to hear more about that. Where you were in life before you made the decision to walk away, and just tell us, I guess, also fill us in on the background, what you were doing in your career as a PA.
So it was all completely unplanned, completely unexpected. I will lead with that. This wasn't something where I'm like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. I had been practicing as a functional medicine physician assistant in family medicine for 10 years. So I was very monogamous in terms of my job when I first started. And my husband actually got the calling for us to move from Michigan to Florida in 2019. Thank God we did. Perfect timing before the pandemic.
Yes.
So I, for the first time in my career, left the same job that I'd always had and found new PA position in Florida, and just wasn't finding the right fit. Things would shift for multiple reasons. So I would have a job for a year or two, things would change. So I ended up having maybe two or three, probably three different PA jobs. And with the last one, I had transitioned from working full time down to part time. So that was the first shift that I made, was just giving myself that permission to step back from working full time. We had three kids, they're all in school, and my husband was then working from home. But we, as a family, there was just a lot of stress. There were, I would hold everything together until I would essentially lose my shit, either my husband or the kids. And I would hate how I felt always afterwards.
Yeah.
And although we don't need to keep it together all the time, I didn't have any of the tools to really know how to speak up and ask for help in a way to have it consistently be there, whether it's with my husband or with work. So I would overperform at work, come home exhausted, right? Come to my family on empty. And I was working a couple days a week. And that last job, there were just some things that kind of came to a head, and essentially was put in a position where I either stay or leave, and I opted to leave. And those next 6 months just were a huge shift for my family. There were things that you couldn't unsee once you kind of stepped. It became obvious at that point that I couldn't just jump right back into finding the next PA job. So that's where the first big shift with this whole career thing changed.
Okay. And what part of Florida are you in?
So we are on the east side of the state. We live in Palm City. So that's between West Palm Beach, Jupiter. We actually in the midst of all of this. So after everything, because money
Right.
to come up, of course,
Right. And
you
that is
built
not
this
an
life.
inexpensive part of Florida to live in at all, I don't think.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
South Florida is rough, but even here, it's grown a lot. So it has become more pricey. But once you have built this life with two incomes, you have to look at, right? You kind of have to, it forces you to have those difficult and really uncomfortable conversations. Okay, how are we going to move forward? And one of those things we actually did last year was we sold our house. So I found the job in 23. We sold our house last year. We've been renting for a year, which we have not done since we had first gotten married, which
Right.
is like 16 going on 17 years, I think.
Yeah.
It's so long I forget. But then we just closed on our new home yesterday.
Oh,
So, and
good.
in now
Congratulations.
the most secure financial position we've ever been,
Oh,
and have managed to do that with me walking away. So scary
that's,
changes, but worth.
yeah. Yeah. And I want to get to that because I think so many people find themselves in that position. And there's just, there's put on us, and we're rewarded for this culture of like being worn down. And I don't want to say high achieving is bad, but I want to say high achieving with overwork, right? Like, which creates burnout, right? And it sounds like that's where you kind of got. And also, maybe I put words in your mouth. Was it a toxic work environment that you were in? Do you feel like, or just it just working for your family?
The very last, I would say yes. There were a lot of things that happened at that job.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because I would go to work and I never had back pain. I had back pain most days going while I was at that job. And I assumed it was the flooring, just like cement flooring. So I'm like, okay, I just, you get up to just something that outside of you, not something
Yeah.
internal. But I was terrified at that job because of the dynamics that were happening
Hmm.
that really were not appropriate. And I would drive to work with chest pain because
Yeah.
I had anxiety. My body was telling me this is
Right. But you were
right.
trying to blame it on all these other things. Yeah. It's what we do. It's what we do. We think,
Yeah.
oh, my back hurts because of this or that. Well, your back usually hurts because you're lacking support. Like
Yeah.
it's so much so to the stress that we have in our life. And there's a really great book. I can't remember the name of it, but I'll put it in the show notes that actually links up. Like if you have pain somewhere or something going on, a lot of times you can really connect it to what's
When your
happening in
body
your life.
speaks your mind, maybe is one of
It might
those you're
be,
referring
yes,
to.
it might be. It might be. It's incredible. Every time something happens and I open it, I'm like, oh my God, now I understand. So, how did
It's
you?
like someone shakes you.
Right. Yes. I have a friend who always says, did you look in the book? Because she's the one that
Yes.
told me about it. And I'm like, no, I didn't look in the book. She's like, sounds like you aren't being very well supported. And I'm like, oh, right. Yep, that's probably it. It's not my golf swing, it's lack of support. So,
Bingo.
how did you and your husband decide together that leaving was the right move and not just not an option, like it was the right thing for your family?
At first, with leaving that job, it was because it was something that happened, unexpectedly. Essentially, we talked about it. He knew how stressed out I was in that job situation, so he fully supported that. And
Yeah.
we didn't come up with a game plan right away, but there was a specific incident. So a specific walk. So we took a walk. It was maybe 6 months into me not doing the PA. And, so finances are dwindling, whereas we needed to have that serious conversation. What are we going to do about money? And I remember how uncomfortable and difficult that conversation was, which is why we did it. Very regulating. Highly recommend if there's
Yeah.
an uncomfortable conversation you need to have with your man, go for a
Walk. So good. Yeah.
and I just really paid attention in that walk to how my body was feeling and what he was kind of doing. Because my tendency would be to the argument, have conversation, have the discussion, and when I get overwhelmed, I can tend to not notice. If we kind of need to take a break in the conversation, he tends to be the one that will quiet, freeze up a little bit. So just on that walk really noticed those dynamics what were kind of happening for us. And we just really had the conversation. We got to figure out what the next step is because we had something change. And we didn't have a solution on that walk. We ended up walking back, maybe the last 15 minutes, just quiet. But I got back from that walk and I was bawling my eyes out because I really realized like I'm not ready to just jump back into another PA job. Our kids were doing so well with me being home. We were getting along so well with me being home, but we didn't have the answers. And he actually came to me in the kitchen and he came up with this line of credit. And I absolutely melted into his arms. He hugged me and I bawled some more. And in that moment, I felt so seen, so protected and taken care of. And that was the moment I think I really connected. A big reason why I chose the career and job that I did and stayed in it as long as I did, because there were so many aspects I loved, but it was the financial security, the high achieving job. For me, that meant financial security and safety. So I
Yep.
equated working in that environment with being safe
Right.
until it wasn't anymore. So it just was one little step at a time that we'd piece together
Yeah.
till today.
Yeah. It's funny because we can feel like financial security, success can equal safety until we are self-abandoning. So I want to talk about that. Like, what do you think ambitious women misunderstand about the relationship between success and financial security and self-abandonment? I'm not saying this isn't an easy question and it's not an easy thing to navigate. It's very hard because so many times we do find ourselves self-abandoning, but we're dependent on the work that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and you're right that there's a lot to unpack with just that question. The first thing is noticing ways that we are self-abandoning. And that would be if we're needing, so if we're working, whether it's full-time or part-time, where are we needing help at home that we maybe haven't asked for or don't ask for? Or maybe we've even, like I was doing this, telling myself like it's my job to plan the groceries, cook the meals, have the house clean, when really there are no designated jobs, right? What are all the little ways we can come together and work as a team and divvy up those responsibilities? Because that was the biggest belief that I had was, and I didn't realize this, is not believing that I deserve to have all of my needs met. And then rest, right? So even the days that I would have off, I'm like, okay, these are the days I need to get all this stuff done
Right.
when really I needed rest. So I think it's really pausing each day or throughout the day, even setting reminders on our phone to do a little check-in with ourselves of
Yeah.
what's one little thing I can do for myself right now that I need that has nothing to do with anyone else.
Yeah.
That is just an act of love for myself. And it could be going and standing outside for 1 minute
Right.
and looking at the sun,
Right.
small things just to start with.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be big things. I always tell people to just sit in the car when you get home. If home is going to be overwhelming and you just came from work, just give yourself 5 minutes in the car. Close your eyes. Like, because people always say, I don't have time to meditate. Okay. I bet you have 5 minutes in the car when you pull in the garage, close the door, and just, it's what I do, hand on my chest. Sometimes I play music and actually do meditation. Sometimes I just sit there and and breathe. But it's a big step. It's a little thing. It's a big step. I love the idea of setting reminders on your phone to just pause, breathe. You have talked about healing alongside a partner with complex PTSD. And I feel like many have CPTSD, and a lot of people don't know that they have it or understand what that means. How did that work for you guys? Like, talk about your experience. Did you know that you had complex trauma or that your partner had complex trauma? No. Yeah.
No, right? So here I am. I've invested all this money in medical school. I have a degree. I'm treating patients every day. I didn't even know what complex PTSD, that it was even a thing. I think the most disappointing thing is that it's not even in the DSM. And if it were, it would actually give the answer and the root cause of so many diagnoses. I think that it's a big reason why so many of us, especially as women, are getting autoimmune disorders.
Yep.
And for me, learning that I had complex PTSD and then how I can actually heal and recover from complex PTSD actually has resolved my chronic migraines, neck pain, insomnia, for which I had been taking sleeping pills for several months. chronic fatigue. I mean, there's so many things. So I knew that I had a complex history in terms of my parents, like my mom. Like, I love my parents dearly. None of it is ever about blaming our parents, but it's about understanding, right? Kind of where these stories and these really how our nervous system is wired at a young age, where that comes from, so that we
Yep.
know how to better accommodate ourselves and the people around us. But my mom is an active alcoholic. So that's, the environment that I grew up in. Dad worked all the time, wasn't really emotionally present, for us. And so I knew that there were some things there in my anxiety, like that. My anxiety was really starting to come to a head, I think, I mean, after 2020
Everybody had
plus.
anxiety. We all had just.
Right. Yes, yes. And, it's like a mixture of being in the medical field and seeing, okay, you're taught how to make the diagnosis, what drug to treat it with. And I had tried anti-anxiety meds in the past, really didn't help. I really wanted to get more to the root of it. So I had done and maybe a lot of people can relate to this, but you learn all the things. So I listened to the podcast and I was learning from therapists online, and I could tell you all my childhood wounds. I understood, CPTSD, which is essentially just repeated. It's just over and over again, little ones, right? And feeling safe in our environment. And I had started EMDR with my therapist, and I had hired shortly hired a coach. So it's just like a hodgepodge of things in my journey I felt led to and called to try to help myself, essentially. The biggest leaps forward that I took when I actually invested in having support, doing the EMDR with the year for a therapist and
Yep.
hiring a coach, actually believing I deserve those things and spending the money on it, because we can't heal alone. We
No.
can't do it all by
It's
ourselves.
impossible.
We
There's
need
just too
help.
much.
We deserve help.
Yep.
And I think it's such a strength to
Yeah.
ask for help,
Yeah.
even if it just starts with family and friends.
Yeah.
So it's just along the way learning that it affected both of us and how we completely different nervous system responses to stress took
It's
away a
so
lot of
important.
resentment.
I feel like that's couples therapy. It should be couples therapy 101. And I did not know that before my current relationship. But I want to just pause for a second. And you kind of highlighted what complex PTSD is. But for anybody who's listening who hasn't listened before and hasn't heard or understood what it is, it can be as simple as social, cultural, familial, very tiny traumas that you have as a child. And I think I want to make sure people understand that when we talk about trauma, it doesn't always have to be a big, huge event or something really terrible that happened. And oftentimes in complex, specifically in complex PTSD, it's like these micro traumas, little things. And I'll explain to clients, and this was explained to me because I too did not know that I had that yes, I did have a complicated childhood because of my parents' divorce and alcohol and all of the things that were happening in my world. But the trauma wasn't happening in these big, huge events or terrible. Like it was as simple as someone saying something to me and my little three, 3 year or 5 year old mind interpreted it a certain way, which led to a negative belief about myself that I held on to because whatever was said or done hit me as a trauma. It just didn't get filed away right. So I think it's important to just make sure people understand that what we're talking about aren't necessarily big things, although big things could have been happening too, especially with a parent who was an alcoholic. That's just probably predicts that you're going to have complex trauma. But so I think that's why so many of us get into later adulthood without realizing, oh, I'm experiencing PTSD and things are popping up and they shouldn't really be bothering me. This shouldn't be a big deal, but it is. And it's because of years of little micro traumas happening. So I just wanted to clarify that. I know you kind of did too, but I don't think most people understand. My boyfriend, when I met him, he had been in therapy a lot, like a therapy, because his mother suffered with really significant mental illness. And they did have a really big, huge, big happen on multiple occasions. But growing up with a mother with mental illness and a father who also wasn't responding to that very well meant lots of complex trauma in addition to the big T trauma. But I met him when he was 46 and he had had multiple therapists. No one had ever said, "You suffer from a lot of trauma." He was like, "No." I was like, "You wrote a memoir and I read the first page of your book." And I thought, "Oh God, like, oh, wow, this person has a lot of trauma." He's like, "No, I don't have trauma." He went back to his CBT therapist and was talking about it. And a few weeks later, he's like, "She says I have trauma." I was like, "Yes, you do." But all of that to fast forward to what you're saying about the nervous system and how all of that early trauma that we've had, all of the early, you can say trauma, you can say experiences that have shaped our beliefs about ourselves, also shaped how our nervous system responds to other people. And so this is the work you've done with you and your husband, and this is the work you do with people now. And it's so important not only to be healing alongside one another, but to understand each other from an attachment perspective, from a nervous system perspective. So, in your words, like, what does it look like when two people heal together instead of growing apart or growing in opposite directions, which is what oftentimes happens?
Feels very confusing because likely there has been no blueprint for you. You haven't seen what healthy handling conflict in healthy ways is supposed to look like. I think what you'll see and read on social media, a lot of times it's a very point the finger at the other person, they're a narcissist, or just a lot of blaming the other person.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing, one of the first big shifts that happened in my marriage was when because did things, I'm like, I'm doing all this work, I'm the one doing all the learning, I'm getting the therapy, you're the one who's not growing, like you're the one who's still a problem.
And that's really hard.
Yeah. So it's when I started asking in every dynamic when there was a conflict or repeated patterns. That's the other thing I would say. So you could call it trauma, but you could also just call it stress.
Yeah.
Like stress that you as a little kid couldn't handle, too much stress or too many, and without being able to have relief of that. And being able to ask myself, how am I like contributing to this cycle, this repeated pattern that we're in? And for me, a lot of the times it was, I'm not speaking up for what I need. So if he's playing a video game and I am feeling, it's because I'm feeling resentful because I need rest and I'm not giving that to myself. He didn't tell me I can't take a break.
Yeah.
I did. It's a story in my head.
Yes. The
It's a
stories.
lot of self-checking, honestly. It's a lot of looking in the mirror because that I think is when the huge changes happen, at least it did for us. And then it really helped for me to know, for me to learn what a trigger was, what a trigger felt like in my body, because essentially we're not only reacting to or feeling what's happening in that moment with our partner, but we're also feeling stuff. So every time that I was maybe punished for having, too big of emotions, right? Because we grew up being spanked. And so it would be punished for having too many emotions alone. And if we would have a big argument, it would trigger some of those same feelings. So anytime I would feel a lot of physical sensations in my body during conflict,
Yeah.
then I knew, okay, I had to practice self-soothing and I had to practice like giving him permission and being okay with him taking space. Like he processes differently than I do. He processes alone. He needs to kind of digest and figure out how he's feeling. And I needed to learn how to self-soothe so that when we would come back together, I could clearly communicate without attacking, criticizing, yelling, maybe I would cry, get to the point where I could allow myself to cry instead of it being a yelling argument because there's anger on top of the sadness. So that's some of it. I don't know if you want to any of that before I spill more, but it's just so.
Yeah, no, it's so relatable because I think that when you need something different to get through, call it a conflict or a rupture, whatever, it's really hard. But once you learn, this has been my experience, like once you learn what the other person needs and what you need, and you can separate and do that and then come back together. For my boyfriend and I, like he also needs space. And I've learned to use the space he needs to take time and calm himself. Like, we've really learned not to ever discuss or have the hard conversation when one of us isn't regulated or we're both not regulated. And to get regulated, he needs time alone. I like physical touch to regulate. If I am upset about something, his body actually calms me down, but I can't have access to him yet because he's not okay. So I'm learning to self-soothe in that time period where he's getting calm enough to have the hard conversation. And then we also have had to learn to look for signs that he's not actually regulated because sometimes we call it, we do a lot of IFS work. And so we'll call it the parts. Like there's a little difference in his voice and his body language when a part is blended with him and has taken over and he's not regulated. But that part isn't going to say, now's not a good time. Part's going to be like, okay, let's talk about it. And then I'm like, oh, even though everything in me wants to talk through because that's like to process things. I've had to learn to say, I think Whitley should wait a little longer and read like his body language. So, and I think my next question, if I can ask it, if you're with it, I think has to do with a lot of that, what I'm talking about. There's a lot of individual work that you need to do to understand yourself and to not take your
Yeah.
so where did you individual work and your shared work need to stay separate? Because I think people want to jump into couples therapy, but what we have found and what I have found working with people is that a lot of the couples work needs to be done separately and then they need to come together to understand one another.
You are so right. I definitely resonate. That is exactly what I've experienced as well. And I think that it's so important for both people to understand just a basic comprehension of internal family systems. Because the way I describe it, essentially, it's like we have this dysfunctional family inside of our head. And instead of the healthy adult coming to the table to handle conflict, you have these young, emotional 5-year-olds or 8-year-olds or even angry teenagers. And then you have those talking each other or to each other
Yeah.
and just you're ripping each other's wounds wide open.
Yep.
And that alone takes away so much resentment from
Mhm.
the couple, I think, at least for me
Yep.
personally.
Yeah.
And you're so right in terms of most of it is individual work, but we do also, there is a piece where we have to learn what is happening in our partner. What are their signs that they're still navigating a family dysfunction within themselves?
Yeah.
Because you'll feel it with a tone of voice if they're short with you. Like he's raising his voice any octaves. I'm like, no, my parts are coming up again. Like, this is not time. You come back to me like when you're ready. I don't think you're quite ready. So in terms of separating work, I've had to step back and not manage him. I have strong managers, like there's that perfectionism in there. And so he has not gone to therapy and he has not had counseling. So the fact that we've gotten here, two things. One, it speaks to the power of what happens when a couple learns how to work together.
Yep.
And two, I think as the woman, like there's different leadership roles, I think, within relationships, but in terms of emotions, like even as kids, we emotionally mature faster than they do.
Yep.
So when we are able to just be within, I think, our power and our emotions and truly express ourselves in an authentic way,
Yep.
it has such a huge impact on me. And we can bring out that absolute best
Yes.
in him,
Yes.
just like we can bring out the worst in him.
We can. Yeah. And it's a lot of holding space and allowing. I think that many men were not allowed to feel or talk about or express their emotions. And we we can them to do that. We just want to make sure everyone stays as regulated as possible or do something different when one person becomes flooded. So, what is the practice? What do you teach people, or how do you guys handle it when in mid conversation? Like, obviously, you're going to get upset. We're going to upset one another. If someone leaves their regulated state of mind or they become flooded in the middle of a hard conversation, what is the practice? Like, what do you do?
I think one important thing is just to even share and acknowledge it's not feasible to be regulated all the time and you're going to be completely regulated during these difficult conversations.
Yeah.
I think it's our individual kind of limits and boundaries are. So when you say flooded, my thought goes to me seeing him start to shut down or
Yeah.
me seeing him start to escalate, because him escalating for sure is a trigger for me and is a hard boundary I can't do.
Yeah.
There used to be yelling at the kids, and so then that would make me fight with him because I get very protective. So it's first just realizing, like, what are the signs that he's flooded,
Yeah.
and then what are the signs I'm flooded. So if we're starting to go in circles, or if we're starting to name call each other or just point the blame at each other, we're actually sharing, like, this is how I feel, and this is the story that I'm telling myself, and allowing each other to be heard, then you kind of notice there's, I think, some flooding there.
Yeah.
So because he's the one that tends to need to step away to process, and honestly, he's this, like, he will be the one to say, we need to take space. Like, I need to step away from this conversation. And for me, I'm just like, okay,
Yep.
okay, we
Yep.
need, then I'll admit, yeah, you're right. We
We do.
need to come back to this.
Right. And the thing is, I think that when you trust one another, once you've reached the point where you trust one another, that you know that when they say they're going to go away, they're coming back. But for many of us, we have these gaping abandonment wounds. And we think, I used to think if I let him walk away, if I don't plead my case or I don't fix this, he's not coming back. And that was very deep ingrained in me. He's not going to come back. But once we reached the point where he would say to me, honey, I love you. I'm not going anywhere. He had to learn was my biggest wound. And he had to
Same.
learn to say, I'm coming back. I want to hold space for this conversation, or I want to, I just need some space. There are times when a part comes in really quickly and I have to say now, but I've learned that. But we only got here to where we are because he learned to say, okay, I'm coming back. I'm not leaving you. And that calmed my inner child and my parts that were
Mhm.
like, oh my God, I can't, um, and that would in attachment terms be, we call it my anxious part, but anxious part is a lot calmer now after the work. And I think our situation, because we're not married, this is a boyfriend, like it is a little bit different, but I'm not sure it matters too much because in marriage, we can be afraid of divorce always, but you are afraid of these ruptures and these losing each other. I tend to think people don't go through the whole repair process when they're married because they think there's this sense of security, which then ends up leading to more and more resentment and walls being built and things like that. That was I think, part of my experience in my marriage. Like, there wasn't this need to fix. Whereas I always tell my girlfriends, like, it's different when you have a boyfriend. Like, it's different. It's just because each person understands this, and either of us could end it at any point, and we don't want that. So we're going to work harder in some ways. So,
Definitely, I could see for me, it would feel more intense because there isn't that security. We would have to legally untie all of this.
yeah.
And I don't even think that married partners are at least so, because same abandonment wound for me, right? But I
Mhm.
wasn't thinking in those moments, he's not going to come back. What I was afraid of is this isn't going to get better.
Mhm.
The pain that would cause me, I'm like, how long can I keep feeling like this?
Yeah.
That was the big fear. Wasn't
Yeah.
like he's not going to come back.
Yeah.
It's almost, can I keep doing this?
Hmm. Yeah. And I think if back to marriage, when we never, things resolved, I didn't, I did so much more than I do now. So I didn't have the toolbox. I hadn't done any work on myself. He hadn't done any work on himself. So we were just rupture after rupture after rupture with no real repair, which just that's that in divorce, right? Like that as
Mhm.
because of what you said, like I just couldn't. I was like, I can't live like this forever. Miserable.
It
Yeah,
makes you sick. It really makes
it
you
does
sick. And
make
that's
you
been one of
sick.
the
Yep.
things, right, that I go back and forth with. I'm like, because, I could focus on, okay, just helping women get healthy or whatever it is. But I don't think that, I think so many of us are just going through our days and we don't realize how sick these dynamics that are so common, by the way, they're so common. Like, I just want
They're
to
so common.
destigmatize complex PTSD and the stress
Yeah.
that comes with it and the dynamics that happen in relationships. I have no shame in talking about it because I know that it's happening in so many couples. I think if we just acknowledge that and we shared about it, even with girlfriends,
Yep.
right, in a way where one, you feel, but then taking, support and feedback and making adjustments,
Yeah. Yes.
it made me sick,
Yep.
those dynamics. And our kids too. It was, even if we think we're hiding it for our kids, we think our kids don't hear the fight or see the fight. Like, we are energy. Our nervous system is giving off energy, and those little bodies feel it. And the changes that happened in our three kids, once we learn how to navigate these dynamics together, like you mentioned, repair. So repair for us looks like we end the conversation both feeling like we both heard each other. I was able to hear his perspective and he to hear mine. Like, we both feel validated in our experience because it's not about being, you're both, it
Yep.
is about, right, coming to a solution that feels good for you together. And then I think that brings such emotional depth. And I think it really ties together too if there's then a physical connection at some point afterwards, even if it just starts with or a kiss.
Yep.
And later on, whether it's that night or next day, can lead to more physical intimacy
Yep.
because I can't accept that touch right away. Like, when I'm upset or even after we've had a conflict, I have to really kind of come down from that.
Right.
So once I am able to allow him to give me the hug or I go in for the kiss with him or the hug, then he kind of knows, okay, we've
We're
made,
okay.
and then it can lead to more later. But
Yeah.
that's how I look at
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think so there's so much that we could unpack in there about just even autoimmune disease. I had rheumatoid arthritis. I've had it since I
it.
was a little girl, but it flared so much, especially the second half of my marriage and definitely towards the end. And when it just felt, yeah, I was holding it all in my body. I had also had migraines. Like I rarely get migraines now. My rheumatoid arthritis has been in remission since just before my divorce was final.
Huge.
It's huge. It's something that I hear from women all the time. And we like earlier, we like to throw out the word narcissism. We like to talk about toxicity. And it's true, there's a lot of toxic relationships out there. But there also are a lot of relationships that, if both people want to understand one another better, have to be toxic. And that leads me to my next question, which is related to this. We as women do have the ability to hold emotional space for men more so than they do back for us. And that's a generalization, but in general, I think we are just more designed to hold emotional space and be able to emotionally support our partner. And many men don't have that. What I have found is that I can get a lot of emotional support through my therapist and my friends, and I can get some emotional support, but not all of my emotional support from my partner. It we're just wired the same. And but my question is what you see happen for women and couples when women realize that their partner can't hold space for them and they don't seek out support somewhere else, they just don't get that need met.
If women are continuing not to receive the emotional support from their husband and they have no external emotional support, is that what you're asking?
Yep.
I think what we alluded to before, which is that we physically become sick. And if we were sick already, it gets worse. So whether there is an autoimmune disease and it is acting up and unable to be controlled with medication, I think that's a big indicator, or other things piling on top of it. My eyes were open even more when I read the book When the Body Says No by Dr. Gabor Mate, just sharing the experience. So many common issues like irritable bowel syndrome,
Yeah.
fibromyalgia, cancer, chronic fatigue, autoimmune disorders, and the stories he shares in there of the types of patients that seem to always get these types of illnesses. And when you see the little snippets of the people please, the receiving help, the doting caregiver, yes person wife, it's sick. And our partner can't and they're not meant to be our, all of our emotional support, but we do have to get to a point where they are able to stand and be the anchor in the storms of our emotions. Because, like you mentioned, we are much more emotional as women,
Yeah.
and we need support from our friends or from family, hopefully both.
Yeah.
And we do need and we definitely deserve to have it with our partner. So if they are absolutely unwilling to grow with us, for me, that would have been the deal breaker to
Yeah.
continue the marriage. Is if he were not willing to keep growing and learning with me, it's not been healthy for me. It wouldn't have been healthy for our kids.
Right. And I think that's a really important message for people to understand, even men. Like the growth has to happen in some capacity on both sides. It doesn't have to be equal, but there has to be a willingness to grow and to learn about yourself and you be curious so that you can support one another. I do think what I see sometimes are when men do go to therapy and they start doing the work, it can really be overwhelming for them because it can be the first time where they're touching on emotions that they weren't, they never allowed themselves to, or they weren't taught that it was okay to experience. And I have seen and we've experienced because my boyfriend he's therapy now finally and doing the trauma work. There are times where I, as his, have to say, I know he doesn't have the capacity right now because of the doing. So this isn't black and white, like we give people grace, we give ourselves grace. I know when I'm doing a lot of work, I've been actually in IFS training, which is intense. It's like 90 hours of training and these 3-day weekends where you're on the receiving end and you're giving therapy to other people. And it's really draining. It's incredible, but it's really draining. So I don't have the ability to hold a lot of space for him in those moments either. So giving each other grace, giving yourself grace, kindness, compassion. But I want to circle back to the physical things because I don't think a lot of people talk about this. And it definitely was something that happened in my marriage. And there's a big difference from then to now for me. And that is libido. And that as a sign, like a sign for a couple or for women, I hear women say all the time, oh, he said my hormones must have been off. I personally went and got my hormones checked because my husband was like, something's wrong with your libido.
Couldn't be that something is wrong with our marriage that's making me not want to do this. Sure,
Right. My
it's me.
libido is like super, super, super. It wasn't at the time. And so I think taking low libido as data and as information and when a woman says her sex drive has disappeared, like what are the first questions that you would ask before you talk about hormones? If someone tells you that.
I saw this a lot with patients too when I was practicing because we did hormone therapy. And a lot of the times, most of the time, honestly, hormones would be amazing. A lot of them had better hormones than I did, and they were older than me. So the questions that I have found to get the best feedback in terms of results very quickly are like, do you have a typical wake up and sleep routine? Are you getting your eyeballs in sunlight in the morning? Are you exercising? How much time are you spending alone each day? Are you getting any alone time? So it's a lot of actually lifestyle questions that are impacting their hormones. And it doesn't have to be just estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. It's also the hormone adrenal glands, our stress glands are putting out. And there are just some really simple adjustments that we can make to see improvements in our sex drive within, in my experience, even days. And sometimes it's how often do you feel like you and your husband are emotionally connecting? Because what I have found is that, if you asked a man, like, ideally, how often would you be, having sex? Their numbers potentially could be higher than ours, not always. But then if you ask a woman, like, how often would you be doing something that feels emotionally connecting with you, whether it's having a deep conversation, going for a walk together, going on a date, any of those things, her number might be higher. So even just putting that out there and sharing that information and learning that, oh, he has this need and it's this number, and I have this need and it's this number, where could we actually meet in the middle? And sometimes it's just, okay, now we're going to choose one date night a week and I'm going to plan it. And then one a week he's going to, or
Yeah.
we're just going to start with massages once a week. So it's simple things that can impact our hormones quickly with no medical intervention at all that we have complete control over. I love being able to empower women that way. And then it's being able to have a simple conversation that one, you learn a lot, but two, you can take tangible steps like just needing to connect emotionally and physically a bit more, taking away a little bit of pressure and taking away the resentment, and also taking away any shame that might come with I'm not having the drive that I used to. There probably is absolutely nothing truly physically wrong. Your body's doing exactly what it needs to. She just wants to hear her. And once you hear her and you give her some of the things that she needs, then her fire is roaring. And for
Right.
me, I've experienced it's even better than it ever was, even before kids.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I think because I with so many women who are either in the divorce process or on the other side of it, what I'm hearing is once you're on the other side and the process is over, which the process is so messy, but once the process is over, many women my age, including myself, have this roaring libido, right? Like insane libido. And then they're like, oh my God, now I don't have a partner. Like, what do I do? So a lot of my work in my divorce group is around pleasure and self-pleasure. And that's really fun to talk about and teach people. And we could probably do a whole episode on women's bodies and how little we know about ourselves and how to do that. But we won't go there too much today because we have other things to talk about. But I think it's important for women to know that there's nothing wrong with them. And what you said, like some of these lifestyle changes can have a huge impact. And also, just because you lost your libido or your desire in your marriage doesn't mean you can't get that back. But it's going to take probably some work for both people. If you're feeling like you're not being supported in one way or another, your needs aren't being met. And it's really hard. I think back to when my kids were little. I, c- I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you have toddlers and you stay connected because we didn't, right? Not. It's hard, but it's
yeah.
making time for date night. My couples that I work with ask like, what's the one thing that you would do? And I would say, if go back in time and he could plan a date every week, there's something about having a man plan a date for me, like that makes me feel really good and makes me feel really important. And then the taking to go there and sit, my boyfriend and I sit side by side we always make sure that we get a booth or a place where we can sit side by side. But even sitting across from one another and just listening and giving each other that is so important. And you can get a babysitter, right? Like, even though your kids are little. We haven't talked about how old your kids now are, but you guys have also changed how you're parenting and how your kids' lives look. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, we homeschool them primarily because once our oldest did her first year of middle school, it was really tough for her. And just her body was showing signs of it. She was coming home with hives, calling out with stomach aches. Like it was just wrecking her. And she didn't even really notice or understand. So we decided to do homeschool because of hers. We figured we may as well pull all three. So they are just finishing up their second year of homeschool, which we did just through a free public school system in Florida. But next year, we're switching to just completely our own thing, which we're excited about. But that alone was a huge adjustment. So they're currently 13 and, well, about to be 14, 12, and 10.
Wow.
So, yeah, you mentioned the toddler and how do you fit it in with all that? And two, one thought was just like seeking away when you get that random urge. It's
Right.
just like going with it, right? Fingers into the door, whatever's happening.
Yeah.
You both will come out happier parents. But I think it's important to have kind of an established boundary isn't the word, but like kind of an established minimum that keeps you both connected because I do think physical connection is so important in a marriage.
Yes.
I know that it keeps my husband motivated to keep doing all this hard work.
Yeah.
And it helps me, even though I wouldn't have admitted it before. I've come to realize I need it just as much as anything else. But
Yeah.
it's establishing a minimum. So for us, it was like always once a week. And that came from a book I had read during our first year of marriage
Yeah.
that just talked about how for men, that's really a primary way they connect is the physical connection. And so I just did a rule in my head. It would always be at least once a week. So we always have stuck with that as much as we could, other than, the usual like after deliveries, that kind of thing.
Right. Right. It's important for women to, more than we talk about, the bonding hormone that's released during intimacy is really powerful, like really
It's a great
powerful.
antidepressant,
It's a
very
great, oh my
anti-anxiety.
God, it's amazing. It's amazing. And just the reconnection, like there's no better way to reconnect. And yeah, I think so. My boyfriend travels a lot for work. And so he's gone for these long stretches. And when we reconnect and there's intimacy, it is, I think, because I'm so embodied now and I understand all of this. I'm even surprised sometimes at how I feel about him before and after. I'm like, wow, like this is a drug. It's a drug, right? It is a
Oh
bonding
yeah.
drug. It can be used against you, it can be used for you, but
Yes.
it's really important for both people. And some people, I love the book, Esther Perel. What is it? It's not coming to me right at this moment, but she talks about even alternate ways that people, if traditionals aren't working or you've been for 15 years and you're like, like trying new things, bringing in toys, like all those
Oh yeah.
things to make it exciting again, or you can do that from the get-go if you want. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
so important.
Yeah, you were
So,
mentioning with the dating too before, and I just thought it would be helpful. I think if you have little kids and they're finding that this is a difficult thing for them, it can be something as simple as just starting with massage. For me, that really
yeah.
helps get me out of my head because that's usually the thing is like I'm overwhelmed. I'm in my head, so I'm not relaxing to enjoy pleasure. And I have found, that, especially when we're both really stressed, is engaging the senses, right? So whether lighting a scented candle, maybe you put a little music on and starting with massage, even if there's no commitment for it to turn into anything, really helps. And most of the time, for me, leads to a great session because then
Yes.
we're both into it at that point.
Right, right. Yes. Yeah, whatever, I think. And, men are so visual, like using that sense for them is really
Mhm.
powerful. Like there's so many ways to to get interested. They're the easy part, I think, in a lot of cases. But yeah, and asking for what you want, asking for what feels good, asking for what you need as a woman. I think sometimes we just become this passive participant, and it's okay. It's okay. You can actually simultaneously let them lead and ask for what you want and make it really fun doing that.
I've had to practice receiving. I don't know if you
Mhm.
have experienced that, but just have had to really like relax into receiving and believe, no, he actually enjoys giving me pleasure and it's not taking too long or any of those things. So that has really helped too, that just like I deserve to feel good. I deserve to take my time. I deserve to receive. And it seems to be better for both of us with that aspect included.
That is such a good point. I don't find anybody talks about that, but it is something we do struggle with as women because it does take us longer to warm up. And I think for me, mindfulness and meditation and bringing that into intimacy has made a huge difference. And I started doing that before I met my boyfriend with self-pleasure. So by the time we met, I had already been able to really stay so focused. And he will say, like, you're good at receiving because you're so present. And that makes a huge difference. Like if you're thinking about the kids or backpacks or what's for dinner,
And it's okay. You probably are. You might be,
you
but first just
probably
notice that's
are
happening.
noticing it's happening. And then for me, it's literally many times just focusing on my body, just what's happening. And it's such a huge turn on. I never did that before now.
Mhm.
I didn't do that. I think sex was for another person before. And now it's 100% for me and for us. It's
Mhm.
very different. And yeah, receiving can be hard. I think I still do sometimes think, is he doing this for me or for him? Like, and so we talk about it. That's the other thing that I think is really important to point out that if as a couple you can talk about the intimacy, you can talk about sex, you can talk about what each other like, you feel comfortable asking the questions. So if it's into my mind, I wonder if he was getting bored or he was getting tired of waiting, or if I can ask him about that later, the answer is never yes. The answer is always like, no, I was totally doing
Uh-huh.
that for me. But the story started happening in my head. And if I can be comfortable enough with our partners to ask the question, ask the hard, uncomfortable questions, ask for clarification, then we can be at ease. And then we can be more present and be better at receiving.
That's such a great point. Yeah, the more we can communicate about that overall, the better it will be. So even if sometimes it's, "Hey, I know that we need this. I know that I'm going to feel really good afterwards, but all I have the energy for is like this long and throwing some lube, using a toy, when and right. So it's like being
Yeah.
very open to like I have the energy for this
Yes.
and just being willing to say it. I mean, if this
Yep.
is this forever person, then you've got to. My husband is always saying, if I can't, do these things with you, then who am I going to get to do them with?
Right. Right. Yeah. I think I was just listening to a podcast the other day, and a sex therapist was saying that the healthiest couples are the ones who talk about sex a lot, and they talk about it before and after. And I believe that because then you're not getting what you want, but you're finding out what they enjoyed the most, and it's fun. It's talk about it. It keeps my fire going. We were just talking the other day, and he's like, we are way past our honeymoon phase. Like we're nearing the 3-year mark and it still feels like a honeymoon. And for the first couple years, he would say, I'm kind of just waiting for you to show your true colors. Like he was waiting. He had been in so many relationships where the women engaged in all of these things and they were just trying so hard to win him over. And eventually they would change. We all know that happens when you're dating people and time passes. But that part of our relationship has never changed and it just keeps getting better. And I think it's because we talk about it a lot. We talk about it, we text each other about it, like we're still very playful. It's really important to keep that going. And we also talk about if we were to ever get married, would that change? And I think that's a big question mark. People always say, well, nothing will change when you get married, but it kind of does. And I think what I would want couples to hear is like, don't let it let you down. Don't stop trying. Don't stop making the effort. Don't stop talking about what makes each other feel good. Keep doing that because the contract can be broken.
I forgot. I mean, we've been married so long and just, you go through phases with having kids and work and all these things. I had forgotten how good play felt. I had forgotten how good pleasure really could feel and I think sometimes it might just be helpful just to hear. It can not only get back to them, but it can even be better than it was, before having kids or, before you got married, whatever it is, because at least what I've experienced is as we grow in our emotional depth, our physical connection depth has grown as well. And that wasn't something that was on my list to need to
Right.
work on.
Yeah.
It was his, admittedly. And so I think that I think it motivates men too.
Yes.
It's reward for them. And it really is for us as a couple too. Just the more ways we can grow in that depth with each other, the more fun even the challenges become, because even then the challenges or even rupture, which leads to repair, it just brings us closer and deeper. And I like to just look at life as a video game. So every time there's a big challenge, it's okay, we're fighting another boss, but that means there's another
You get to
amazing level on the other
elevate.
side of this.
Yes. I love that. I love that. And it's so true. We've always said every time we have a big issue, right? Like there's a big problem and we have to work through it, we are better on the other side. Talk about that more and talk about the physical more. The At what did you realize, oh wow, like this is actually better too? Because I think that's really important for people to hear that you can get it back. So many people think once you're on this downward spiral in your relationship or in your marriage, that you can't get back to this fun, playful place where you feel like you're dating again. Maybe you can't get back the same two people that started the marriage, but maybe that's the point. You want both evolved. So you want the same marriage to work, even though you're both different people, and it can. Like, can you talk more about that? Because I think I need encouragement in that area.
Yeah, definitely. It starts with little things. So I think if you have stopped even just giving each other a kiss, good morning, and I think that's such a simple place to start.
Yeah.
We've never let that go. I don't know how or why. It just always was something that we have continued to do, no matter what's going on. And then gratitude has been a big thing too. Just whether it's like a hug to show that, or I love words of affirmation, so I like to dish them. I definitely like to receive them. So just starting, if they have lost that way, it's been off the table for weeks or months. Again, just taking away any of the shame of it. I think it's so common.
Yeah.
And we can start to get it back by just implementing those little adjustments and then building on it.
Yeah.
And just come the conversations too, of just saying, hey, I've noticed we used to be together this often and we're not doing that anymore. And it's really important to me that we reconnect. And I would really like to start that by us being consistent this month, every morning and every night before we go to bed. But I would just love for us to give each other a kiss and just start there.
Yeah.
And, when into a room, like giving each other a hug, just starting with those little things
Yep.
because it's low pressure. And I think there's such a big impact. And when you see the positive shifts that makes, I think that it will inspire both partners to kind of keep going with.
I love that. Holding hands, like all of
Mhm,
these things.
mhm.
My boyfriend holds my hand when he's winning, and it's so cute. And I'm like, I loved it. But he never stopped doing that. He grabbed my hand on the second date when we were walking like back to my car. And I remember looking at our hands and being like, wow, wow.
It's just things so
It's a
powerful
small thing,
though.
but he let me open a door and he will never walk alongside me without holding my hand and making sure he's on the side of traffic. Like those little things make us feel safe. And it's so small, but it's so impactful. What about the conversation? Let's talk a little bit about what not to do when we're having these kind of conversations, because I think you can easily go towards shame or shaming your partner, your spouse for not doing things. And that's not the right way to approach the conversation. It's going to lead to defensiveness. So if you are a woman who doesn't have a libido issue and you have a spouse who isn't making time for intimacy with you, what do you think the best way to initiate a conversation about that is without leading to them feeling shame or like saying, I don't know, just not saying the right thing? I think things that were said to me that were not helpful were, this is part of marriage. You are obligated to do this, or we haven't done this for a month. There's a better, let's talk about that.
Definitely. I love that you asked that because that was one of the things I was thinking is, ooh, okay, so first we're going to need to know how do we actually broach the subject without it making things worse? Because we were
Right.
like, I listened to this podcast, I walked away, I tried to talk about it and it blew up in my face.
Right. Because it's very easy. If you just go to your partner and say, we haven't had sex in a month and, I'm missing it, there's probably going to defensiveness. Like you just have to be more careful. So let's talk about what that can look like.
Yes, I think with, whether it's that she has a higher drive and she's not getting that this and she's okay, they're saying that the physical connection is going to help our emotional connection. And so I do want to have that conversation. The first thing, looking back in the past, so areas that I admittedly messed up that I would have done differently, the first thing would be to check in with him when we can have this conversation. So not just walking in when he's busy with work or he has just come home from work or, you can kind of see he's overwhelmed. So just first checking in to see if there's a good time that we can talk. And again, maybe go for a walk, something like that.
Yep.
Go outside. Getting outside, I think, can be really helpful.
Yep.
And just using a lot of I statements I found to be very helpful. And what has helped my husband is some physical touch. So just putting, a hand on his knee or holding his hand or touching him in some way while I'm having that conversation seems to just calm him and bring him into the moment.
Yeah.
So that he's quickly going to a story of, I'm never doing enough. What am I messing up again?
Right.
Because that's the story that would come up for him.
Yeah.
And it's just saying like, I miss you. I want to feel more connected to you. I know that we've only been, connecting like this once a month, and I think that I could do better. So I'm going to start reconnecting with you by doing such and such. It's the kiss, or I would really love a massage from my night. Like, is that something that we could try? And, if it doesn't lead to anything, I need that to be okay. But just, I love you. I want to reconnect with you. So just lots of I statements.
Yeah.
And that's really where I would start. And then, like you mentioned earlier, is notice if either of you is getting flooded. So if it's becoming a circular conversation or there starts to be blame, just allowing to kind of take that space and come back to the conversation. It's not about these conversations going perfectly. It's about doing it over and over and over again so that instead of it causing a rupture for days or weeks, maybe instead it lasts for only a day.
Yeah.
Maybe it's hours. And so you're just getting better and repair. Because
Right.
rupture is okay. We just have to become masters at repair.
Yeah. Yes. What for the woman who isn't interested, is kind of turned off right now by her spouse, and she recognizes that it's because her needs aren't being met. She's exhausted. She doesn't feel heard, and she's not emotionally connected. How does that woman who doesn't want to lose her marriage or her relationship approach the conversation without leading to defensiveness? Like, what does that look like?
I think I would have the conversation with her first, just if she is giving herself some self-love, it would be her asking herself, like, what do I need? What are little things that I can give to myself? I don't think that we can really truly have capacity to ask for and receive the type of love that we want and need until we've started to be able to give some of that to ourselves. So I would really be starting with myself, and that's something that I have had to do. And it wouldn't have been, sexual pleasure at first. It would be going to get myself a massage or going to take some alone time and not feeling guilty about it. Or if I did feel guilt, just like allowing myself to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Really giving myself some self love, I think, would be the first place that I would start. And maybe that can lead to self pleasure. And then once you're teaching your body and reminding your hormones in your body that release feels good and you need it, that may naturally cause some inspiration and drive to want to have those conversations with him to kind of reconnect physically with him. But I don't think there's anything wrong with her starting with her first.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that when my libido turned back on, it was at a point where I truly loved myself, but I had done so much work to get there, and I recognized I was always running an internal dialogue, the storytelling and the ruminating about what in my marriage, like what he wasn't doing for me, and that I couldn't get him to do a date night. I couldn't get him to barely come home because he was working so much. And so I was so angry. And now I can look back and say, I wasn't doing anything at that point to show myself love, right? Like I was shopping, just doing some numbing. It's definitely spending a lot of money on shopping, but I wasn't doing the things yet that were really nourishing for me. And so I agree with you. I could never have had that conversation and then been able to receive anything from him until I had done some work and some really big self-care tasks. And
You alluded to one thing too about the noticing that I think is important. And one thing that could help is actually, so turning on your reticular activating system, which is like the noticing of things, by like writing down one little thing you actually are grateful for him.
yeah,
Like he took out the trash today, or he actually did the thing I asked. Writing down something you do because it's so relatable, is noticing all the ways he's showing up that I think we overlook the ways that he is. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just
no,
wanted
that's
to,
good.
I
That's
think
really
it's so
good.
helpful.
Yes. Yes.
If someone would have told me that sooner, it might have
Yeah.
helped save us some grief.
Yes, definitely. I think that my situation in my marriage was not salvageable. Like there was just never going to be the ability for both of us to do the amount of work that we needed to do. And it had, we were 20 years of these patterns now. But I'm so grateful that I did do the work afterward or even during the divorce process to get to the place where I was really, when I met my boyfriend, it was only 4 months after the divorce was final. But again, I had been doing 2 years of work on my own while we were in that process. But when I met him, I was like so open to being loved. I say, like, I was just ready, like, for to be loved, to feel love, to give love. And I also felt strong enough to endure heartbreak. I remember thinking this person could really hurt me. And I was like, it's okay. You got you. You know, that's work I don't talk a lot with my clients about, but I think that if you want to stay in the marriage, like it's just as important to find that love for yourself. And you can do the work. Now, I did go through the Gottman, like an online Gottman program by myself while I was married, thinking that that would help. And I was so excited because I would watch the
I love how
modules
you
and I was like,
rolled your eyes. That no, when you said that.
because I was so excited when I went through the program, but then trying to take what I'd learned in it and educate my ex-husband and then being rejected, it was worse, right? Because then the resentment was even bigger. Because I was like, if we just did these things, if we just both did our work, And so I almost weaponized it against us as a couple because I was like, I'm doing the work now and you won't even listen to me. You won't watch John Gottman do this TED Talk.
Yeah. It's so funny because we like the work looks different for both of us. And I think it's okay to admit that.
Yes, now I see
And
that.
we cannot do the work for them. And we push them to do the work. They have to want to learn how to connect with us in different ways and
Yeah,
they want to grow with us. And it's just a reiteration. If they are absolutely unwilling to learn and grow, divorce is sometimes the right answer. Like it
yeah,
has been with my parents. That has happened for them in the last couple of years. And I'm so glad it has happened with some other family that has been close to us. And that was the right choice. Like staying in the marriage isn't always the answer, but when it is, there's so much growth and healing and like love that can come from it. And that can spread to everyone, I think, around you,
yeah,
like even friendships that are in your circle
absolutely.
too.
Absolutely. My relationship with my kids is different. I understand them better because of my relationship teaching me how to understand someone else's nervous system. It's, yeah, it's every relationship when you just to give people, once you can give yourself kindness and compassion, then you can give it to other people and you just see everyone differently. I see everyone through the lens of everybody's doing their best with what they've got, what they're equipped with, right? So, one thing we haven't talked about much, and I want to cover, and then I know we need to be wrapping up, but is setting the proper boundaries inside of a relationship, friendships, and families to protect ourselves from being overextended, burning out, doing too much, and how we can communicate those boundaries in a really healthy way, not in a defensive way or not in a way that cuts people off, especially our partner.
So boundaries first with a partner, I think it comes down to boundaries within conflict. I remember my husband had to set the boundary many years ago that I stopped taking my wedding ring off and threatening divorce when we would have arguments. I would have tantrums. Admittedly, I
Yeah.
would have tantrums. And so he had to tell me, like, that's a boundary. He's like, it really hurts me when you do that. And I think that's the first place is just setting boundaries with each other. If there isn't name calling, there isn't, we're going to slam doors, just those sorts of
Yep.
things. And I think even boundaries with the kids too, right? I think it's okay for our kids to see rupture and repair. I think it's really important
Yeah.
for them to learn repair. So I think establishing what the boundaries are in terms of like how you have disagreements with and near the kids, or even let's say with friends. Are you talking about problems in your marriage outside of the relationship? What does that look like? Are you doing that in a healthy or unhealthy way? Are you just going and constantly complaining about your partner, right? And painting in this negative light that's going to impact friendships
Yep.
and not actually doing anything to change the dynamics that you're in. And then with family too. So it's been for us with family establishing boundaries, and we have had become a united front where peace comes first and foremost. And so if we need to take space from family, or if we need to separate ourselves from certain family members or limit how much time we're able to be around them, we've had to really communicate and agree on that together as well. So boundaries look different depending on, I think, which person you're needing to set them with. But again, it's having the conversations and saying the things out loud and navigating it together.
Yeah. Yeah. And learning as you go, right?
Yep.
We are 3 years in and we've just had to kind of reestablish some new boundaries. And part of that is because of our growth that I can set a different boundary and say, if you're feeling yourself and you think that might not be leading, I would rather not spend time with you because you might fall in a hole or you're feeling down. And that's okay. I want to support you, but I don't want to be brought down with you. So if you're in these different types of moods and you feel like you need to be alone, I really need you to be honest and not people please.
Tell me what you need. Please ask
Yes,
for it.
that is a boundary I couldn't have before. We did set an early boundary that was helpful. We didn't name it. I don't think we named it a boundary, but I used to do the thing when he would say he was going to leave or go, not but he would need space because he has a very avoidant attachment style. So in the first year, there'd be times when he needed to go, and I would give an alternate option. I'd be like, but you could stay and you could work in my office, or you could stay and you could. And it was a way for me. I could never let him just leave. I always wanted him to stay longer. And he, in his own way, and after a rupture, we figured out like for him, that was really triggering for lots of reasons. And for me, it was triggering when he would abruptly say he was going to leave. So the boundary was, okay, I need a warm up. Like I need notice that you're going to, like, you want to go. And he would need me to never give him a counter option, right? Because his system couldn't handle that. Now his system can handle it, but at the time it couldn't. It would make him angry, really angry, like, or he would people please, and then he would become resentful.
Mhm.
So we don't need that boundary anymore. We just kind of know, and we don't have those issues, but we do have other things that now we set.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And yet we've had to implement those same boundaries when it comes to rupture with each other. What I need communicated versus what he needs. And it was the same thing for him to speak up and say, I need to take space, but I will come back to you.
Yep.
And me be able to learn and trust that he will come back to me when he's ready and he will come back in a different headspace, ready to actually resolve. And then for me to give him that permission, I'm not going to hold it against you or use this as fuel to this fight or argument or whatever it is that
Yeah.
you left. So everything is
Right.
worse.
Right. Right.
Same.
Yeah. Yeah. So much communication and openness and vulnerability was not easy for everyone. So,
Yeah.
well, so we have talked about many different things. And as I expected, we didn't follow the exact set of questions that we had, but we touched on a lot of it. And this was really helpful. I think I want to close with authenticity and what that means to you now. You are in a place of transition yourself and probably feel like you're living pretty authentically based on everything we've talked about. But what does that mean to you right now in this season of kind of transition and growth?
I think authenticity, at least for me, means a lot of checking in with myself on what feels like a full yes in my body,
Mhm.
whatever that decision is that I'm needing to make, whether it's do I go back part-time as a PA? Do I want to only get my business started back up again, which I've, also put on hold the last couple of years through this transition? Where do we want to move? All of these things. It's really checking in and learning what's a full body yes and what feels like a should,
Yeah.
because there's a big difference there. And it's being willing to change your mind, which
Yeah.
I did not realize I had a problem with or that was a struggle, but being willing to change our minds and for what feels like a more authentic and full body yes, that's been new also. And it doesn't mean that you're wishy-washy or weak. For us, it meant we, for the first time ever, were able to truly ask ourselves, what do we truly, how do we want success to look and feel in our family? Because it doesn't need to just be going to a 9 to 5. And for us, that
Yeah.
just doesn't fit more. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm lately with authenticity and how do I know I'm making the right decision that's authentic and aligned for me?
Mhm. I love that. I love that. Yeah. And that changes too, right? It evolves.
It
Yeah.
definitely does.
Yeah. But it definitely feels good. Do you know what your human design is by any chance? Do you know
I'm a
human design?
manifesting generator and my husband is a generator. And when I
Okay.
tell you, when you are manifesting together as a couple, as that, it works so well. We've manifested some incredible things
That's
together these last
wonderful.
couple of years.
We
But
didn't talk about how impactful it is to understand each other's design, but we have found as a couple that that has been just, it made a huge dramatic impact. I'm a manifester, and so we're very different, and he's a generator. We work very differently. We interpret information differently. Yeah, everything about when I started my business. And I was telling him all the things I was going to do. And I'm like, it's always kind of changing because as a manifester, you're always getting these creative urges. And he was so overwhelmed that at one point he's like, I don't think you can talk to me about your business anymore. Like it doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense. And then we realized, oh, like that's not, he's a worker. Like he's gonna just keep generating. And I'm just, right, and informing. And so it's so different. And at one point we had an email, someone had sent me an email and I was really offended by it because it was feedback and kind of, I interpreted it as criticism that I didn't ask for, which as a manifester, that's a no. And he read it and he goes, this is fine. She's just giving you feedback. And so I ran it through Claude and I said, how would this be perceived from a manifester and how would this be perceived from a generator? And it was spot on. And I was like, okay, this is really eye-opening for me and for him to see that we are literally taking in the world through very different lenses. And that's okay. But we have to understand the lens, right? So if I don't ask him for feedback about something, I don't want to.
Yeah.
And it's offensive to me for him to be
Uh-huh.
like the fixer that men like to be. I'm like, no, I got this.
Yes.
So it's funny. But you're right. When we set our mind to something together, we can manifest. We both are very good manifestors. We actually wrote a list of the person we wanted to meet almost in the same week in June of 2023. And we had met on Hinge, but never got to actually meet in person back in April of that year. And we had just text, and then our schedules weren't aligning. So we kind of signed off on each other. And I reached back out about a week after we both made those lists. Of course, not knowing that that happened. We had our first date in the early July. And then a year later, he was like, I made a manifestation list. And I went back and looked at it, and you met ever all but one thing. And I was like, oh my God, I made one at the same time. Our dates were almost exactly aligned. So it's kind of cool.
I was gonna say the minute he said I made a manifestation list, you were like, marry me. Just me.
Right. Well, when we were texting, one of the first things he said was, so you're a Pisces, we're a really magical match. And I was like, I like what
Instantly turned on.
you know about astrology. Yes. So
I
yeah,
love that.
because he's like, why were you so excited about me? I was like, you were talking about your feelings and your astrology and you're in therapy. Like that wasn't
You're
some,
like
that
looking for
wasn't the,
the unicorn thing on his head.
and I was like, this is not what I'm used to meeting. So it's great. So anyway, thank you so much. This was a great conversation. So much learning. I learned a lot and just so much good information. I think that could help people, whether they're struggling or not struggling in relationship and in transition. And I love that despite like all of this change in your life, that it seems like you're really thriving. So for you.
Me
Yeah.
too. I'm happy
Yeah.
to. And thank you for letting me share. And this was such a fun conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. So are you doing any work with people right now? And do you have social media presence? Like share all of that information with us.
Yes. So the baby steps that I've been taking right now, because I have put my business on hold, is I have been showing up as a podcast guest because I have felt called to serve. I want to share that information to whoever needs to hear it so that I can help. So if you just look for my name, there's some other podcast episodes. So if this has been helpful, there's some others that hopefully will feel helpful too. And yes, I am on social media. And once we do this move this summer and get settled, my husband and I are finally starting our podcast, and
Yay.
we're starting to open up some offers so that we can help couples achieve, some of the things that we have, and just more joy, more connection, more depth,
Yeah.
a lot of fun and play. So that's kind of what is in the works right now.
Oh, I love that. Yes. Keep us tuned in to that too. And maybe once you get that business up and running, you can come back on. We can talk to both of you. That would be fun.
Yeah, definitely. That'd be fun. And we'll have you on too, so we can talk more about maybe some human design or whatever
Yeah.
naturally comes up.
Yes. 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 Talking about human design. All right. Thank you so much, Kayla. And if anybody wants to find Kayla on social media or other podcasts, I'll have all the information linked in the show notes. So thank you, everybody. Till next time.